Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and on this Monday afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by Ange Canavan and Tony Haggerty. We're going to be talking about the weekend that we've just witnessed as Celtic supporters and the week ahead. The big game against Hearts obviously coming up, but we will have a depleted squad. And I'm going to ask yourself first, Amy, how surprising is that really when we've been going on all season about the protection of Celtic players from that very first game when Halliday went in high on McGregor. We started pinpointing every single time that happened and it was going unpunished. And here we are moving into the month of February, going into a very tough run of games, and we're going to be without probably our most influential player, our leader in Callum McGregor, due to the fact that these roughhouse tactics, as I've called them today, have never been challenged. They've never been challenged by us as a club. And we need to talk about it because we need to talk about how to resolve this. But first and foremost, how surprised or were you surprised at the tactics deployed by Barry Ferguson's Alloa on Saturday night?
Not a single bit. And I'm surprised that we're going into this Hearts game on Wednesday, or as you say, this string of games, with a depleted squad. Again, not at all. I think Alan Morrison touched on it on Friday. We averaged 6 injured players every game. That's astonishing.
That is.
And I understand and I appreciate not all of them will be because of tackles or opposition. We've touched on this before as well, that I don't know if it's an intensity in training or the style of play, but there are just a lot of hamstring injuries right now as well. So I appreciate that it's not all from tackles and whatnot, but a proportion of it is. And hopefully, I don't know, I'll maybe ask Alan to look into that further and figure out the stats on that one. But no, I'm not surprised at all, and I'm not surprised at Alloa's game plan really on Saturday to a degree. I can't really blame them. When you go to, even if it was not Barry Ferguson's side, you're going to go to a lower league side in the Scottish Cup. They're going to sit back and they're going to try and bite away because they know they're not going to outplay a Celtic or a Rangers or a Hearts or a Hibs, although Cove Rangers will. But it's just kind of the nature of going to a lower league side now. But in saying that, you then expect a high quality referee in Don Robertson, if you can call him high quality, but he is one of the top grades. He's a Premiership referee week in, week out. You expect a little bit of protection. And you're spot on. If the club aren't speaking out about it, somebody has to. And it shouldn't just be Celtic fans, it should be fans right across the country. And I've said it time and time again, it's not just a Celtic issue. I'm not going to batter on about it, but if you've anyone caught, Auchinleck Talbot up against Hearts, it was the early kickoff on Saturday. I'm all for an underdog story more than anybody with Rose, but Talbot, got away with murder. The Hearts offsides, the punch, and Maradona would have been proud of that punch. The offsides, the referee, and just the officiating across the board, across the country is just an absolute disgrace, to be honest.
That was one of the points, actually, that Kevin Graham raised in our private chat group around the fact that what's the point in removing a particular referee from a particular league and putting them down the leagues, because down there the refereeing's not much better. So the issue is across the board. But I think we're in a week, Tony, where Rangers take up a complaint against Kevin Clancy. Obviously unhappy that they've had someone sent off after 2 and a bit years. I think the last time they had somebody sent off was probably the last time I had any time off in the studio. It was over 2 years ago, Tony, and the antics of Scott Brown obviously annoyed them somewhat as well. So they raise a complaint. Now, I'm not going to say that we need to look at another team in Scotland and say, well, that's how they deal with it, this is how we should deal with it. But we've been talking about this all season, and it comes up to the point where the referee against Alloa was the referee against Dundee United when Turnbull was taken very, very high. It was almost knee high. And then people start to pull out other challenges that he has officiated. I think the Tierney one against Motherwell, which was horrific. That was a horrific challenge. Was it the boy Bowman that took him high, right up in the knee? So against Alloa, what did we see? We've seen a shoulder to McGregor's face. We'll talk about this in more detail because I've seen a lot of people saying, listen, that was accidental, that could have happened. I look at it slightly differently. Do I have my green tinted spectacles on? I don't know. But I just feel that if the boy's going to put his body there, and having no attempt whatsoever to actually get to the ball, then he's endangering his opponent. And that's exactly what happened to Callum McGregor. Salmon elbows Welsh. Welsh must be feeling hard done by. He got elbowed in the League Cup final as well, remember? No, semi-final, sorry. It was Rooney, elbowed him in the face as well. Jota comes on, and we're all chuffed that he's coming on, and he's scathed within 60 seconds coming on. And of course, Ideguchi was literally kicked off the park. I was surprised that he walked off the park, Tony. So we're now in this situation, as I was saying there, and as Amy and I were discussing, that we are going into February and nothing has been done. And in many ways, it's getting worse. So what, as a football club, should we be doing about this?
We said the last time, I said that they'd reached the tipping point, that Celtic had to challenge us. You don't need to do it publicly. You don't need to tell anybody. And I'm not, and I don't know. I mean, as Jim often says, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Maybe Celtic are challenging this, but and I guess Ange will not be drawn on it. Ange just doesn't want to make excuses. His mantra is always, "We'll just win." Yeah, and that's fine if you are winning, but as Amy said there, the referees in this country, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. They're just rank at their job. They're rank awful officials. And I've said before, Don Robertson, what's he seen or what's he not seen in all of these incidents that you and I, to the naked eye, can see firsthand and at normal speed that it's a sending off? This guy's qualified to make those decisions. And see if he's not getting any help from his assistants, then they're all no fit for purpose. They should be removed from office and removed from duty. Who you replace them with, I don't know. Then it becomes the argument, well, they're all just as bad as each other, and they are. They're all trying to outdo each other this season with utterly preposterous decisions. How you can't tell me a guy, putting his body into a man's cheekbone isn't a sending off? It's endangering an opponent.
Yep.
Read the rules. How you can't tell me that the follow through on Ideguchi's no a red card is beyond me? And I wrote a piece in the Celtic Way, and I came on this broadcast and said it as well. Somebody from some team is going to end up with players seriously hurt. Now we watch it through a Celtic prism because we're Celtic supporters, and it's my job to watch Celtic football matches. So I'm not being biased because I'm watching the team that I support, and it's my job to watch. But I have also made the point that Aberdeen, Dundee United, Motherwell, Hibs, Hearts, they'll have a litany of decisions within their own clubs. So it's up to them now to say, enough's enough. Everybody come together and say, we've had it up to here. Because somebody is going to get a leg breaker. We spoke off camera, we reckon there's about 12, 13. And Alan Morrison's been doing his own thing about compiling these instances where Celtic players have been hurt. And they've been badly hurt. And it's through the grace of God that nobody's out for the season. Because some of them are shocked. I mean, the definition of shockers, and nothing seems to be done. And if you're talking about, do you know what I'd love? I'd love to pin Don Robertson down and talk him through them. See that Dermot Gallagher style? And say, you tell me why you gave that decision. I think referees now have to be told to speak up or something so that you can get a better handle and a better understanding, because it fuels paranoia, basically. It fuels conspiracy theories. And as I say, I'm not either or. I just think they're rank bad officials and they're hopeless at their job. But up and down the country, football fans are tearing their hair out because every week they're seeing guys, the victim of shocking tackles, and their club or the club they support being the victim of horrendous decisions.
The one player that springs to my mind from the not too distant past who's come into the side and seemed to be targeted time and time again, Amy, was Jeremy Frimpong. I mean, the amount of terrible challenges that went in on Frimpong, I've seen him getting stretchered off at least twice. Now, you look at some of these young guys, looking at Scotland and Celtic as an option as part of their progression and their journey. And they look at that and they think to myself, well, actually, you're going to get kicked off the park and it might be a career-threatening injury, or you might lose a year of your career due to the fact that there's no protection. That's the big thing. Going back to what Tony said there, I focus on the protection of the players. We know that the standard of refereeing is really substandard in this country. The reasons around that we could debate forever and a day, right? But really, it's the protection of the players that's important. So when you watch that, I mean, the one against McGregor, you can see that there's something awry in his face when he's walking off. There's something broken. There's something fractured. The tackle on Ideguchi, you're worried about the ankle because of the angle that the ankle's sitting on, the plastic turf. But see, when you watch it back, the way that his knee almost straightens out, that's dangerous as well. So you're endangering two parts of the player's leg. That's in just his second game for Celtic, in his first start for Celtic. You've got a player in Jota who we're trying our best to bring in permanently. And he's looking over at Benfica and the possibility of returning to Benfica. There might be interest elsewhere. He's on the park for 60 seconds and he's completely snapped. And it must put players off, Amy, looking at the standard of a referee and the failure by the officials to protect players when they're looking at Celtic as an option.
Yeah, it has to be. And I said it before, I'm not looking for additional protection for the creative players and for your Yotas, or going back to Frimpong, your fast players, sorry. But there needs to just be that basic protection, the referee's duty to protect all players. But I wouldn't blame any player, because you're looking at this and you're thinking, like, say, you think, right, Celtic, and I know people don't like it, but many players do view us as a stepping stone. There's just no denying it right now. But why would you want to use this even as a stepping stone? Because you might not even get to step onto another stone, because your career might be over by the time you've even left here. Because these tackles, they're shocking. But it goes back to, it's not looking for any kind of additional protection. It's just the basic protection that referees' duty. But it's right across the leagues. I don't know who's going to start calling it out, but somebody has to.
Yeah, and when you consider that, Tony, imagine being an agent and you've got management of a number of young players and you're looking for moves all over Europe and further afield, and Celtic are interested in one of your boys, and you can look at all the success stories and you're selling that idea to somebody from Portugal or even from Japan, and you say, within 3 years, you're going to have interest. If you perform at that level, when we get into the Champions League, you're going to have interest from the big leagues, one of the big leagues. And that's the promise that they'll be giving to their players, right? Do you think it would eventually, if this isn't tackled, pardon the pun, do you think it would start putting young, talented players off?
It's possible, but I get what you're saying. I mean, I was up out my seat with the first challenge on Jota. I was just, you're just thinking to yourself, wow.
Just back from injury,
Back from injury. And the first one's and it's an attempt to hurt him, and you're not, as Amy said, you're not looking for favours, you're just looking for referees to do their job, protect players. I mean, when I was playing, I used to walk onto the park and say to the ref, joke, first thing I always say to the ref was, protection for ball players, ref. And I would say number 7, and he would laugh, but you put that seed in his head that, all right, let's see how good you are type thing. And sometimes you did get protection, because guys want to get you up and down the place when you're out wide. But, I'm of the opinion that, I don't know if that would necessarily put, I hesitate to use the words hammer throwers, right? I don't think sort of that kind of reputation in Scotland would put somebody off coming here when you can play for a team like Celtic or Rangers. You can play in front of vast crowds and possibly play in a Champions League. You'd have to ask individual players, but there's always that. People add that caveat, don't they? Can they do it on a wet Wednesday night and at Ross County or Inverness or Alloa? That kind of thing. So these are entered into the Scottish football lexicon for a reason. Players might not fancy it, but I tell you what, the one thing that I was pleased about on Saturday was the fact that James McCarthy actually showed a bit of physicality for Celtic on Saturday, and I was kind of cheering that. I thought, well, at least if you're, people can slag you and say what they like, but you put the boot in and went like that. Do you know what? No, you're no kicking us up and down the place. I'll boot you back. And I think there's a lack of physicality possibly in the Celtic team. We have a lot of flair players, which is another argument altogether. But you're talking about, I still think Scotland's an attractive proposition for foreign footballers to come to Celtic or Rangers and play your football with the trappings of success and spin-offs that entails. And that's probably your best, stepping stone to England, if that's the way you're going to frame it. They don't sell it on the back of you're going to go to Alloa on a Scottish Cup tie and play in plastic, because you see it might have a detrimental effect on it. But most people see the likes of Celtic and Rangers and the Champions League and winning and being successful and winning trophies as their lure to come to then take their career on to another level. Will Jota have made up his mind on the fact he gets sacked down at Alloa? I would conjecture not.
It used to be a harder thing to sell, Tony, of course, where you had to show them the training complex. It was Barrafield, and you're attracting players like Cadetti, Di Canio, et al. And here are our training facilities. Brilliant. Now, the one who skived, because I'm going to keep using that word, Jota, I think it was Boyd, wasn't it? Number 11, Boyd. And was it not the same Boyd who later on done the exact same to Rogic? Now, there are at least 2 bookable offences, both those tackles, But when you look at the booking count, Alloa had 1 player booked, Celtic had 1 player booked. You look at the possession again, and it was 79 against 21. Celtic penalised 9 times for fouls, Alloa penalised 8 times. How often have we seen that this season? Amy, we've seen it against Livingston as well, where we're getting like 80% of the possession. It must be every time we lose the ball, we're kicking somebody.
Yeah, it doesn't add up, does it? The Livy one was amazing. I remember the stats after that. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I think we just laughed for a good minute. Like you say, it would have been a tackle like every 30 seconds or something. It was crazy. But going back to Saturday there, it doesn't add up. I don't know, there's a lot of talk, I think, around the whole of Scottish football right now that you think, like, right, do like previous, does your previous history, your track record kind of go against players and whatnot? But if that's the case, and it was totally out the window on Saturday as well, because Niang, who caught Gucci, he's been sent off twice. I watched them obviously against Bonnigan the previous round. Rose obviously beat Alloa obviously beat Rose, and it was the same kind of guy that we highlighted, because you're like, wow, there were a few reckless ones there, and he's a big physical guy. Not got a problem being a big physical guy, as Tony said. It's probably something that Celtic are lacking right now, but to be able to go in on Gucci like that, and it just, not even to be laughed upon, but just kind of been to really be ignored to a degree. And you even look at the Callum McGregor one as well. It's another case of ignoring. Play wasn't even halted. You should really say that it's a head knock for starters, so the game should immediately be stopped. That's another, error on Don Robertson's part, because the minute there's a head knock, it should be stopped. It took a good few seconds, I don't know, probably about 5 seconds, because the ball went to the other side of the pitch until play was stopped for McGregor. So it's time and time again, and I don't, incompetence is a big word, but it's getting to that stage. It's the basic errors that referees are making, and the McGregor one in particular is just shocking. The fact that the play wasn't even stopped initially. So we're saying that, how is the referee not seeing that? He's not even noticing or highlighting it as a head knock, which is so clear when your captain, who doesn't go down, who never really goes down, talking about track records, he's not a guy who stays down for more than 2 seconds. He's right back up. So you take that into consideration as well. The fact that he's down holding his head and play wasn't even halted, that's just, that's the glaring thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's about protecting the players. And I think McGregor, the list you're talking about, Tony, in the wee black book, it definitely is at least a dozen strong, maybe more, and ever growing, of offences that should have resulted in red cards or further stronger action. And I think McGregor's been involved in at least 3 of them. Halliday on the first day of the season, Porteous against Hibs, where there's a gash in his shin, and finally the serious one. He could be out for a couple of months. That's the worst that I've seen. The worst scenario is that he might be out for a couple of months. So you go into this game against Alloa, Tony, and it would have been lovely to go in and win 4 and 5-0. We were talking about the game when Cadetti scored a hat-trick back in the day, and we won it a bit of a canter. It wasn't that type of night. So you look at that tie and think, well, it's good just to get out of there with a win, and you move on to the next round. What did you make of the game, though? And in particular, Tony, some of the players that came in for game time who had previously been on the fringes, such as Ralston, Scales, Welsh, Ideguchi even, and Giakoumakis. What was your thoughts on their performances?
I thought Scales was the most impressive of all the ones you mentioned there. Scales was really good. Delivery was on the money for Giakoumakis' goal. Giakoumakis took his goal well, and difficult skill, the volley. But that apart, I wasn't too impressed with Giakoumakis. He looks a bit too static for an Ange team. And again, the second minutes later, or moments later, when he's running through, see, when you separate great players and good players lay that off, or they score, right? Because they see the picture, they see the overall picture. They don't miss. Someone said to me, if that's Larsson running through, he's chipping it over the goalkeeper, isn't he? He's dinking it and scoring, right? Or if he thinks there's trouble, he just shunts it to the side to his partner who's got a tap in.
Yeah.
You've got to see the whole picture, and that separates the great players and the good players. And even then, your jury's out on Giakoumakis being either or. He needs a lot more game time and a lot more to convince the Celtic fans that he will be the man to lead the line moving forward at all. But he took his goal well. I'll give him credit for that. And then missed that sitter when a wee bit of vision would have helped. Apart from that, I wasn't too impressed with him. Ideguchi, I thought was tidy, was okay, but I don't know if maybe I was expecting a bit more because of the other two had hit the ground running, Maeda and Hatate against Hibs. But I'm allowing for the night it was, and the fact that he got a cruncher put in at him, and that was maybe a culture shock for him and playing on that kind of surface, and so that's fine. Ralston, tidy, did okay. Welsh, still, I think he was in a game with Salmon, wasn't he?
He should have done better at the goal, I think, Tony.
I thought he should have done better as well. Just got caught right underneath it, and wasn't he a nervous last 12, 13 minutes per se, but it was a lot more fraught than it probably should have been. Again, Celtic were missing chances. Maeda missed one. Giakoumakis, I think, missed one as well. But so these things are on a heightened nothing. You win 5-0, nobody bats an eyelid. You win 2-1, you lose players, and it comes at a cost. But the job done. We'd have loved to have got the job done, a lot more efficiently and without losing players, but we did. And I think that's the big takeoff from it, that we lost vital players from it.
Yeah.
When you look at when Celtic earlier in the season, Kyogo and McGregor were out. They were vital parts of our team, and we won one game in 5, and that was against Wraith Rovers in the Cup. We drew against we lost to Livingston away in the league, and we drew against Dundee United at home in the league, and we lost European games in between. They're two massive players for our football team.
Yeah, yep.
Massive players. So you cannot underestimate that or underemphasise that. And we lost those players due to the ineptitude of the officials.
No, that's exactly it.
Lost McGregor, sorry, to the ineptitude of officials, because you're not protecting players.
It comes right back to the key point. I mean, if I was looking at that performance, and by the way, we will be getting everybody's views on this matter. If you're in the comment section, keep chatting away and we'll pull up as many comments as we possibly can. I was looking at Ralston, I thought he looked a wee bit rusty coming in, but that's what's going to happen if you're trying to rotate and you're trying to bring players in just to give them game time. Often that'll be the case. Scales, I was impressed by. I have been impressed with Scales. I think he done it against Ross County, didn't he? And he done it against Alloa. Again, his delivery looked very good. You could almost think he could play left wing back the way that he was playing there, Amy. Welsh, player that I like, but I thought he was caught napping a wee bit again, and that's a part of his game that we have highlighted before. Ideguchi, I thought he did all right as well, but as Tony says, you're coming into the shadows almost of Maeda and Hatate, who have followed Kyogo. So the expectancy was very, very high, but I thought he did all right, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of him. And Giakoumakis I'll come back to, because I gave him somewhat of a hard time after the game, and I'm going to explain my thinking behind that, and it's certainly not to have a go at Celtic players just for the sake of it. But I didn't think he played particularly well, Giakoumakis. However, you've got to take into account the fact that he's not had a run of games. He's had a stop-start season due to injuries and fitness, match fitness, and perhaps you've got to go through a number of games like that so that he can get his sharpness. So I take all that into consideration. But really, when I look at Giakoumakis, he scored a goal. I thought he took it very well in 13 minutes. 15 minutes, he's one-on-one with the goalkeeper. It should result in a goal either way, Tony. Like you say, you either lay it off or you score yourself. On the 65th minute, it was the second half that I felt he performed poorly. The ball comes to him and it bounces off him. There's a fresh air kick. I'm starting to get concerned after 65 minutes if your legs are going at that point. 67 minutes, a really, really poor ball to Rogic when we're on the attack at that point, and he basically plays it at such a pace to Rogic that it's behind him by the time Rogic gathers it. 70 minutes header from Scales' cross, could have done better. 84 minutes miss from a Maeda cross. And again, it went down as a good block by the defender, but I don't think the defender had much choice because it was played straight to him. So when I'm looking at his performance, I'm looking at every single part of the game that he's involved in. So rather than the distance that he's covered and the heat map, etc., but the moments where he's involved in the game, and I don't think he done enough with the ball. He could have had a hat-trick, Amy. What's your thoughts on these players who currently are potentially fringe players, but who might have to get utilised, and in Giakoumakis' case, will be utilised in the coming games?
Yeah, Giakoumakis has got a big few days, weeks, games ahead of him. So I'm not too critical, and I know you're not being critical either, so it's not the right word, but I don't think it was a too bad a performance on Saturday from him. I do think he should have, either laid it off to Maeda or scored. I think everyone can kind of be in that general consensus. But at the same time, I think Maeda should have scored with his effort, or at least should have played it back. So I think in the sense of, missing goals almost, I think they both kind of have to be judged kind of fairly. But I wouldn't be one to judge Giakoumakis right now. I think he said it himself, this is his season starting now. It was always going to be probably a tiring game for him. After the hour mark kind of level, because he's not played for so long, and he admitted that himself. But I really liked his post-match interview. I thought he seemed really keen, and I think he's aware that the pressure is now on him. I think the team will probably need to also not pander to him, but we'll need to realise that he's not the typical for Ange's system. It is going to be much more of Joe Hart with a big ball up and just trying to find him, and he is going to be a target man, and he rightly should be, because look at the size of him. He definitely should be. So it's a different avenue to go down. But I think it will take probably Hearts on Wednesday as well to not be too harsh, but he'll probably have another tricky game, and he probably won't be up to what we want our standards to be at. But I think he needs to be given a fair crack of the whip. I think he needs to be given these big games, and if he scores on Wednesday and scores against, and scores in the Glasgow Derby as well, he's going to be a hero. So it's fickle as a Celtic fan, it's fickle as a Celtic fan, as a football fan, but for me right now, I wouldn't be too harsh on Giakoumakis. I think he's done okay, and I think the misses and the criticism that can be put on the misses could be put on Maeda as well.
Nice bit of balance here from Amy, just to show that you don't get a script before we come into the bulletin, Amy.
My opinion.
Well, absolutely.
Well, I also think that in a roundabout way, Wednesday night, it'll suit Giakoumakis. It's a rough and tumble game. You know what I mean? Hearts are going to come at you, and it's going to be a bit similar to Alloa, but I think you're going to be playing on a much better surface, and I think actually you can alleviate a bit of the pressure on him or the criticism by scoring in a meaningful game like Hearts, Dundee United and Rangers, and then people's mind will start to change. You're only commenting on what you're seeing. All strikers miss chances. I get slaughtered for having a go at Kyogo in the first game of the season when he should have had 6. And he only got 3, and I made that comment. But Ange is still banging on about it. We were talking about it back then in August about missing chances.
Yeah.
We're still talking about it, and the manager's angry about it, because after every game he says, we missed chances, we weren't clinical enough, we weren't ruthless enough. So, when you're playing as a striker for Celtic, you have to be clinical. You have to be ruthless. And that's all we're asking from Big Giakoumakis. And I agree with Amy to an extent that, I think it was Alan that said 900 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of formed. So that's 10 games, isn't it? That's probably fair. But as I said there, I thought he took his goal brilliantly well. It's a really difficult skill. I mean, delivery was bang on the money, but he buried it. So you can see there was a predatory instinct. But, I mean, seconds later, he gets what you think's an easier chance. And he contrives to miss that by not being in total control as he's running through and making up his mind, or else not seeing the full picture and squaring it for, so you're wanting your striker just to be switched on at all times, and be aware, just be spatially aware and just aware of stuff. And maybe you want more. And if he's going to be a target man, so be it. But make yourself a nuisance. Be a pest. I didn't see that often enough from Giakoumakis on Saturday. But I want to see it on Wednesday. And if he says his season starts now, which was a very good interview, as Amy highlighted, then go and prove it. Go and show us that your season starts now. Go and be hungry. Go and score twice against Hearts. Go and beat them in the score sheet against United and bust a gut to do it against Rangers. And then you'll convince everybody that, you do have something to offer moving forward and you will come good. That's all the Celtic supporters want to see. You can put up with strikers missing chances, but not when, it's down to lack of concentration or lack of ruthlessness, or just, that it might be one of the few opportunities that you get and you're remembered for that rather than your overall work rate. Nicola can miss chances, but his work rate can never be questioned, can it? And people always say he puts in a shift for the team. He's got that hard working ethic, and and he's always terrific, even if he's not on a score sheet. Most of the time he is, but he's not. You can't say that about Giakoumakis. And Maeda the other night scored a goal after 4 minutes, but everybody was impressed by the way he shut down everything, and he was on the go the whole time. And you want that from that's the way Ange wants to be. And I know Giakoumakis is maybe not up to speed with that yet, but he's going to have to learn that that's the kind of shift he's going to have to put in, which is why when he was coming on for these 25-minute cameos, holding the ball up, playing guys in, he actually looked pretty good, right? Because that was kind of catering to his game and it was only for bit parts. But now we're wanting it for the whole game because he's going to have to be trusted, because he's the only natural striker we've got for the next 3 games, which, as you and I know, and Amy knows, these could be season-defining games.
Yeah.
You've got Hearts away, Dundee United at home, Rangers at home. 3 games which could define your campaign.
See, when you think about getting 2 goals against Hearts, I just hope Bio-esque that they don't go down as OGs. I hope he does get the 2 goals. And I'm delighted when any Celtic player proves me wrong. I've not written him off. I've just said he was poor against Alloa, and I did think he was pretty poor over the piece. But see, when we're looking at some of the points that we've raised there, the other one being that these guys get a chance like they did against Alloa. The way that things have gone this season, going back to the start that Allen's already produced, which is astonishing, 6 players on average injured for every single game, then you've got to take your chance. It doesn't matter if it's against Alloa on a plastic park. You've got to make an impression, because you never know that in the next game, the big game, you might be the only guy that can fulfil that position. So I think that going into the game against Hearts, we will have a wee talk about who starts. We're going to have a wee chat about the midfield and the makeup of that midfield. If you're listening in and you disagree with any of the points that we're making, comment, and we'll bring up your comments if we get round to seeing them. They are coming in thick and fast. We're going out to about 1,000 live, so thank you all for joining us. And Magnet67, always looking really chuffed with himself with that catch, a couple of fish there. The board should present their case. There's a lot of people out there who are constantly fishing in the comment section, Magnet, so I don't know if that's a wee nod to them. The board should present their case with all the clips as evidence and demand outside impartial referees. The thing that wouldn't surprise me is if Celtic were doing things behind the scenes, because obviously we hear constantly about Rangers being unhappy because it's broadcast or it's part of a statement. What I've seen, Amy, since Michael Nicholson particularly has come in, is that they seem to just go about their business. I mean, one minute we're sitting here and we're unaware of any signing targets. The next minute we've signed a player. That's the way that Celtic seem to be going about their business behind the scenes. You know, we unveil 3 players before the transfer window opens. And if Celtic were going about some kind of action, I reckon it would be behind the scenes and we wouldn't be aware of it anyway, Amy.
Yeah, I do agree with you there. So, and I've not got a problem with that, to be honest with you. I quite like, you know, as we kind of say, like non-footballing matters, and the non-footballing guys can kind of deal with that. So I'm more than happy if it is happening, but it does have to be happening. And I know then I'm kind of contradicting myself because then how would we know? But you can live in hope that it's happening. But I don't have a single problem if it is being done behind the scenes. And I agree with you. I think that's kind of the way so far that Nicholson is just going about his business. And I don't know if that's just because he's maybe aware of the situation, aware of how he could have been perceived or how he was perceived really when he did come into office really. But yeah, it does seem to be the way that things are going, and I'm more than happy with that, to be honest.
Now, David Bates comes in, another cracking avatar, Davy. It is time that the Celtic board publicly take the SPFL to task for not ensuring player safety. They have a duty of care. It would also be easy to provide footage of the incidents to back it up. Now, that goes against what Amy says, but when I bring up what Sean F. reckons, I do wish Ange would say more in regards to protection of our players in the post-match, as he seems reluctant to say anything in regards to this. Would that suggest, Tony, because he doesn't shirk any tackles, does Ange, does that suggest that perhaps Ange is safe in the knowledge that things are happening behind the scenes? And that's why he's not calling it out as such.
Yeah, you can possibly read that into it. And I think Celtic would be derelict in their duty if they weren't doing it behind closed doors, flagging this issue up. I mean, it would be a gross, dereliction of duty, wouldn't it? Because enough's enough. And again, I'm talking about purely from a Celtic perspective. Watching every week tackles going in on their players, which could put them in the stands for a long time. Just thankfully they haven't. But you're just waiting on it coming now, aren't you? And it offered absolutely no protection, no referees clamping down on it or taking the necessary action needed against the perpetrators. So something has to be done. And I'd rather Celtic did it privately myself, because we don't need it. A narrative or a soap opera like that played out publicly. And I think that's why Ange will not make any reference to it.
Mm-hmm.
All year, since he came in, no excuses. We go again. We get on with it. That's been his mantra.
Yeah.
And you know why? Football, football, football. Stick to the football. We'll just stick to winning matches. We're getting injured players, and it's a challenge. So he keeps telling his players to rise to the challenge. Can you rise to this one? Can you rise to the next one? It's 3 big ones coming up. And people say, you take it one game at a time, Hearts on Wednesday. Yeah, I get all that, but you've got a 3-game sequence where, if you do not come out of that looking rosy, you're fearing the worst, sadly. And whatever happens, the manager will not turn around and say it's because of injuries, it's because of referees. He'll always talk about the football side of it.
Yeah.
We didn't play well, we weren't ruthless, So I think that's the way Ange wants to play it. And I think he is confident in knowledge because they've got a really tight working relationship, him and Michael Nicholson. I don't think for a minute that a conversation has not been had by Ange and Michael Nicholson about what to do about this. And you can present your case because you, like yourself and Alan, you can have a detailed dossier. You can have the incidents and you can put a case to say, we want an explanation. We want answers as to why this wasn't a red card, Because the 3 that you spoke about with McGregor, they all happened in front of the referee, right in front of them.
Yep.
So again, I go back to it. And it's not a case of having green tinted specs, which I actually do have green tinted specs, but that's neither here nor there. And what are you seeing? What are you not seeing? I mean, the one with Halliday was incredible. I mean, Bobby Madden was right there. He saw it he saw it from the angle that most people saw it from, because he was kind of behind Halliday as he lunged in. It's a clear red card.
Yeah.
And then a referee let Chris Kane kick Cameron Carter-Vickers, just blatantly aim boots at him while he's on the floor. You know, and you're thinking, what are you seeing there? And then you bring the two of them together, and I think, did he book the two of them?
Yeah, Carter-Vickers got booked. He got booked for basically being kicked and
kicked on the floor. Yeah,
well,
for being a victim of somebody booting him. You know, so you turn around and you say, where's the fairness in that? Where's the protection to our player who was lying on the floor? In these kind of instances. So I just question what they're actually doing. Everything's coming back to your original question. You know, so whether we do, I'm in favour of doing it privately. You approach them, and then that way it's not played out in the media, and there's not so, which is why Ange he'll not entertain it. You know, these things he just brushes off, and we'll talk about football. And I think that's the way he wants it. Because at the end of the day, you're going to win the title by playing the football that he wants, or not, as the case may be, whatever. But you'll know fine well where you stand after the next 3 games.
That's the thing. We've been doing that all season. We've been looking at the games almost in blocks and saying, well, if we go through that and get X amount of points, we're still in fighting here. Paddy Lavery, welcome to the show again. Afternoon, folks. D67 likes your comments about James McCarthy because he thinks we should start dishing it out ourselves. But Sean comes back in. That's now McGregor, Turnbull out with significant injuries. Rogic away on international duty along with Maeda as well, and Kyogo possibly still out. Hopefully we can sign another 2 signings this month. What does it do then, Amy? Because a couple of weeks ago we were pretty chuffed with the way the squad was shaping up. We're bringing in new bodies. We're finally getting options. But after a game and another couple of injuries, some international duty call-ups as well, we're now looking at, we're going into games against the likes of Rangers and Hearts. And I'm going to say makeshift because the midfield, particularly, is going to be a makeshift midfield. There's going to be players in there who haven't played together in the Celtic midfield. So it's frustrating, but does that point towards more signings coming in? Do you expect anybody to be added to the 4 that we've already brought in? That's not counting a 5th who's been brought in for the B team, but 4 first-team players. O'Reilly, in fact, could probably feature earlier than we expected as a result of all of this.
Yeah, he certainly could. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were more signings. I know, not mind games, but Postecoglou obviously ruled anything out, and then the signing of O'Reilly comes in. So he's keeping his close to his chest, and I'm more than happy with that. A few more surprises along the way, I wouldn't be surprised, and they certainly would be welcomed. But I don't know if this would, kind of fast track it in any way. I think Ange will still go about his business the way that he would want to. I think he's already obviously brought in Hatate and Gucci. He's obviously got Near Beaton as well, who is performing well for him, especially just before the break. So midfield is certainly light, certainly lighter than we'd like it to be, but I don't think it's of any real great catastrophe still. Obviously, you would like it to be in a stronger position without the injuries, in particular to obviously McGregor and Turnbull. And rightly so, I like the fact that Ange came out and said, it's not necessarily, no, it's not bad, obviously, that Rogic has got called up, because you want him to get called up, you want him to get that recognition, and it's the same with Maeda. So I've not got a problem with that, because it would be shocking if Tom Rogic wasn't getting called up, especially on his recent form. Although in saying that, I don't think Saturday was his best game, and I'm obviously a massive Tom Rogic fan. But no, I don't think that this will necessarily fast than anything or fast track any kind of moves, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ange already did have some in the back burner.
We'll have a wee talk about the most recent transfer news that's coming through involving a player that's leaving the club, perhaps. Strangelove the doctor. The elbow on Welsh was a red card. Yeah, I think that's the second one we've seen this season where it could have resulted in a red card. And Brown Warrior, the lad who left one on Gucci, was actually having a great game. Didn't look out of place against us. His follow-through was terrible. The more you watch it, the worse it seems to get. And Monty's asking why McGregor was playing in the first place. I mean, this is something we spoke about before the game, in the days leading up to the game, and which players would be rested, which players can you afford to rest, which ones you can't afford to rest. And I remember against much better opposition last season, and at home as well, we rested McGregor against Ross County and it backfired. Tony, I don't think you rest your captain. It doesn't matter who you're playing.
No, hindsight's a great thing. Nobody thought McGregor would get injured on Saturday, when he was playing. So, any Celtic player could get injured this season. We've seen that in action. So, you trust the manager. The manager wanted to play the captain on Saturday because, as you see, you can easily come a cropper at these grounds, and then it's, why did you not play McGregor? If he's not playing and you get beat. So, I told you, you're damned if you do, damned if you do in these games. Nobody thinks for a minute that someone's going to slam into McGregor and fracture his cheekbone. It's just, but they have. We're now missing a vital player. But in the words of the manager, you have to go on with it and deal with it. You want your McGregor to play on Saturday, that's it. You don't rest your captain for these games. So I don't have a problem with McGregor playing on Saturday.
Also, Tony,
you have to win the game.
We've won the game 2-1. Now, you take a captain out of that, you take McGregor out of that game entirely, and it becomes tougher because, who plays in his place? You might say that the first guy in line might be near Beaton, and it's a discussion for later on anyway, because we're going to be looking at the midfield for Wednesday night. But that wasn't an easy game. That was a potential banana skin. And I just think you needed the core of your team in there. So it's not about a player getting injured, why didn't you rest them? That's just having the benefit of hindsight. When we're looking at the Cup as well, you're looking to win every tournament that we go into. I mean, Tony's already putting in his holidays for Albania on the 25th of May. We want to win every tournament we go in for. And when you look at the last 16 as well, I mean, some of the lower league clubs have done really well to get through there. When you look at the percentage of them, Peterhead, Arbroath, who are having a dream season anyway, Annan, Partick Thistle, Celtic Hearts and Wraith Rovers, all in the last 16. And of course, we draw Wraith Rovers. We've already played and beat them this season. And we'll deal with that game when it comes round. But when we're looking at the players outgoing then, I'm going to come to Amy first and then come to yourself. We've been talking all season about Mikey Johnston and what we need to do to try either to get him back on track in a Celtic jersey or for him to go into the next stage of his career, Amy. He's only 22. Now, I say only because he's been round about the team for a number of seasons now. Left winger, of course, where we now have options. We didn't really have many options up until recently. But he's got a long contract. His contract runs up until the end of May 2025. So with 77 appearances under his belt, there is a suggestion that he might be going on loan, Christie-esque, to Aberdeen. Is this the right move for the player and for the club?
I don't think so. I would much rather him go to Kilmarnock, to be honest with you. I saw those were rumours with Adam Montgomery, but I would also be more than happy if Mikey Johnston went out there as well. And the reason that I'm saying that is because I just think that with Kilmarnock, it's the same kind of way that teams play against Celtic, the way that teams play against Kilmarnock. And I think it'll be great for Adam Montgomery, and I really do hope that move goes through. But I wouldn't shy away with Johnston out there as well. You're also thinking they would probably be playing down the same flank. But the way that teams sit in and try to defend against Celtic and make it really hard to break down is the same way that they're doing against with Kelly right now. Albeit there's a few teams at the top of the championship right now. It's really tight, really contested. You mentioned Arbroath. But I'm not sure if Aberdeen is the right fit right now. I'm not too impressed with Aberdeen. I don't think things are clicking. I think they're definitely going better under Glass than they were at the start. But for me, I don't see it being the right move for Mikey Johnston. The creativity, I don't think that Aberdeen have that. Up top, there's Ramirez, obviously, who I do quite like, but I'm not the biggest fan of him going up to Aberdeen, in all honesty.
What's your thoughts, Tony? Because, again, pretty early on, there was a couple of players where I identified, the other one being Dembele, actually, but he got injured, another guy on injury list. But we say about Johnston that it's a make-or-break season at Celtic. Hasn't worked out so far. We're moving into February. We've got cover now that we didn't really have up until recently on the left-hand side. A loan deal of some description, and I'm a big fan of loaning out to this, a team in our league. so that you're playing at the level. And I'm looking at that Aberdeen, and I'm probably thinking of Christie, but there's no guarantee it's going to work out the same way. If it doesn't work out wherever he goes, what happens to Mikey Johnson?
Well, first and foremost, I disagree with him in terms of I think it's a good idea for him to go to Aberdeen, because he's not going to get any game time at Celtic, because we do have that cover that you say, and I'm a big fan of just getting used to the teams that you're going to play and the terrain, and just go and do what Ryan Christie did. Go and do what, McGregor's the other one who went on loan to Notts County, did well. Ayer at Kilmarnock won a Premier team. So those three guys, just they're your role models for going on loan and making a difference and coming back refreshed, re-energised and confident, because you've actually contributed, made an impact and had minutes, as opposed to playing bit parts here and there with a Celtic support who still make him a scapegoat and a whipping boy at times. I've had my say on Mikey Johnson. I've told you that I just don't think he's going to make it as a Celtic player. But this is a chance for him to go out on loan and get valuable game time and get that run of games that people keep talking about and make a contribution, make an impact, so that when you come back, you are the player that everybody thinks they see in Mikey Johnson, which I just don't see. And and if you can, you said he's got a long contract, and if it doesn't work out at Aberdeen, then you'll know you'll have to cut your losses, and there'll be a mutual parting of the ways at the end of the season, because it was a big season for Mikey Johnson, and so far, for me anyway, he's failed to impress. And as I say, I've had my say on it, and I just think that maybe getting out of Celtic at this moment in time is the best thing for him. It's the best thing for Celtic, to see if he can, agree with that too, to see if he can kind of resurrect any semblance of a Celtic career that he might have on his return.
David agrees. David Miller comes in as well. We're looking ahead. We know there's games before the Rangers game. We're looking ahead to that, and a draw, reckons David from Perth, would be a good result at this stage. All comes down to personnel, doesn't it? And when we're looking at the players missing, Kyogo injured, McGregor injured, Turnbull injured, Maeda and Rogic on international duty. Maeda, I'm going to say he's going to be a loss, even though we've only seen him for 2 games, because he's shown what he can do in those 2 games. And I think that by the time the Rangers game came around, he could have been up to full speed with 4 games under his belt, etc. We know that's not going to happen. Every one of those players is a big loss. And I think the midfield is the real concern at this moment in time. I'm going to give you what I think we'll start with under the circumstances and with the players that we have at our disposal. And it might seem a bit strange. I'm just sorry, everybody who's expecting me to say James McCarthy starts. No, I'm not going to play James McCarthy, but I will play Beaton as my 6. I don't think he's let us down in that position this season, even when he's come on as a substitute. O'Reilly, and people might think you don't know anything about him. I think we're in a situation where we need a number 8. We need that box-to-box type player. Who else can do that job? Is he fit? I hope so. And if so, I would introduce O'Reilly into the side. And then does that mean that we play Hatate as that number 10? Because that's a position now that we're struggling to fill with a natural number 10, a player that we would expect to be playing there. I think Hatate plays there. Amy, what's your thoughts on the midfield trio for Wednesday night?
I can agree with you that I think it'll be Beaton. I just think his experience will come in. We're talking about guys who know grounds and all these different factors that contribute, and the fact that pre-Christmas break, I think Beaton was doing more than okay. I'm not sure if O'Reilly does come in right away. If you then ask me if who then should come in otherwise, then I'm probably scratching a little bit there. But it's a baptism of fire if it is. But I think Alan Morrison said that he's got all the stats or the info on him, and so far going through the division that he was in, he was at the top of almost all the charts. So he probably can come up and do it at this level. So maybe Ange will throw that curveball in. He is partial to a little curveball, but I can see being beat on a bit, and would be happy with that. And then I was impressed by Hatate against Hibs last week. I know a lot are saying that it wasn't as great as perhaps the post reaction was, and perhaps it was hyped up a little bit. But I just thought he looked like a Rolls Royce, to be honest. I think he walked right in, really controlled the pitch. He didn't really, show any kind of lapse in concentration or anything like that, and I think he was able to step up to the occasion really well. So I've been more than happy with him, and I think so far, obviously it's just one game, so I'm not getting on the high horse too much, but he just kind of fitted in quite seamlessly.
He did. He was very impressive, and I felt Maeda had a great first game as well. Tony, what's your thoughts on it? Because I mean, there's 2 or 3 different ways you could line up. Do you think there'll be any surprises? Do you think someone's going to come in from the cold? I wouldn't expect that from Ange.
No, I wouldn't expect that. I'm inclined to go with that midfield 3 as well. Hatate, O'Reilly and Beaton sitting. Because I think Matt O'Reilly has been having a tremendous season for MK Dons. And so, his confidence is there. And I think barring the fact that his international clearance wasn't through, I think he would have played some part on Saturday. So it's a risk. Granted, it's a risk with 2 new players in Beaton, but what else have you got? But also, we're talking on a podcast earlier this morning, and one of the boys said Juranovic possibly to come into the midfield because he can play there if he wanted to shore it up, or push him in a more advanced position. So that's a player that Juranovic can actually do that, and then you could just put Ralston to where Juranovic is if he was inclined to do that. But I've got a feeling that he'll go with Beaton sitting and Hatate and O'Reilly. That was my first thoughts when I was thinking about the midfield for the Hearts game, because I still think on paper that looks pretty decent. I know I've not seen. You're judging Hatate on one game, as Amy said, but it was quite impressive. So that's fine. Beaton you can trust because he's found a bit of form, arguably the best form of his Celtic career. You can argue the toss on that, but I think he has this season. So he's not let you down. And then O'Reilly, from what you've seen of him, he looks like that dynamic box-to-box guy who's got an eye for a goal as well. So I would let him loose and see what happens. And if it's not happening, then change it around with maybe Juranovic or whatever to suit. But that was certainly my thinking. And as for taking the 25th of May off, I've only done that because I want to be Partizan and Tirana. See what I did there?
Yeah, the Tyranian beard was part of that particular game as well. Now, if we're looking at the comment section, Simon brings up a point in relation to when do you rest a player like McGregor who plays. If he's fit, he plays. And, that's been the nature of Callum McGregor since he broke into the side under Ronnie Deila, really, playing a huge amount of games season in, season out. Well, I always think that games like the Alma game probably are not the occasion to rest a player, because that is a potential banana skin, and in many ways more of a banana skin than a game against a team in your own division at home who aren't doing so well. And so in the same game at home against the likes of Dundee or St Mirren or Ross County, if they're in the lower reaches of the division, that you would maybe bleed a youngster in. I think that's the same kind of game that you would rest a player and put him on the bench. And your backup is the fact that, if it's not going so well, he's on the bench and you can bring him on. That's the types of games I would be far more confident in resting a player like Callum McGregor. And I think that the point I made last season was that when Welsh came into the side, because it's a similar type of game, when Welsh came into the side and he's thrown in against Rangers, that boy should have had 20 games under his belt. Because for the previous 9 seasons, we had won the league. So there are occasions at home against teams that aren't doing particularly well in the league that you can play young guys and you can rest guys like Callum McGregor. What's your thoughts on that, Amy? I just see away games often as risky. I mean, we beat St Mirren 6-0 at home. We can draw nothing each away from home, which has happened this season. And I know it doesn't always work and there's no exact science, but if you're playing a team in the league from their lower reaches, I think that's when you rest a player like McGregor.
I don't know.
At home.
Yeah, it sounds like hindsight, obviously, but I predicted my team on Saturday, and I didn't have McGregor in it. I obviously, like I say, I seen Alloa. I know that makes me sound, but I genuinely did have it before. And I wasn't impressed by Alloa. They beat Bonnyrigg obviously 5-0, but it wasn't Bonnyrigg were absolutely shocking that day. So I wasn't impressed by them at all. And I do agree with you, to be honest. And then usually in a game like this, I wouldn't rest McGregor, but I think it was just I was so conscious, obviously, that the run of games that Celtic have coming up, Hearts, Dundee United, Rangers, and I just didn't feel that this was the right game for McGregor. But I was doing it with my dad, and my dad had McGregor in because, and then his argument was, you're just back for the international. I'm going to say international, but just from Christmas break. And you're wanting that string of consistency. So everyone is going to have different opinions on it. Personally, I didn't have McGregor in purely because I didn't think that Alloa were going to cause really any kind of concern. They're really stop-start in the league as well. They can go on a decent run, but then other times they're just absolutely woeful. So I know a banana skin is always potential, but see if it was against like a Cove Rangers, and I know that's easy said after them Hibs, but Paul Hartley's got a lot of money out there, a lot of good players out there, and are playing, they should be playing much higher up. I think Alloa are playing at their level. So even if it was an Arbroath, something like that, but I didn't really see Alloa being a potential banana skin. And you look at the result, I know it's 2-1, but it was never a 2-1 game. I agree with what you say, but then in the same, you would look at, Celtics against St Mirren in December, and it was shocking. So you would be dropping McGregor then. Hindsight's a wonderful thing at the end of the day. But yeah, if it was me, I actually wouldn't have had McGregor in.
Listen, were you picking the right team? And Colin Watt predicting the outcome of every game in the Scottish Cup? I think we need to start putting a coupon on. Right.
I think
now,
so.
There is a player who has just signed for Aberdeen. Thanks, Amy, for the update. They've signed a Dutch winger, Vicent Bezuijen. I know that's probably wrong, but they brought him in from Den Haag, and he's a winger. So, it looks as though if they are looking for Mikey Johnson, they've obviously had a few other options as well. So who knows how that's going to affect any potential Mikey Johnson deal. But I'll tell you what, that's been a quick hour, as it always is on a Monday. Big hot topics that aren't going to go away until changes are made in relation to the way that we officiate our games. Do referees have to be full-time in this country? I think that would definitely be a step in the right direction. But thanks everybody for getting involved on the chat section. It's always good value to dig into the chat and see all the internal conversations that go on between a lot of the regulars as well. Thanks for joining us on Facebook and LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch and Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, get onto YouTube and subscribe as we are putting out content every single day. We'll be in Manchester tomorrow filming some brand new content. So watch this space. It should be on the channel within a week or so. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you to Tony Haggerty and Amy Canavan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.